They have been around for over 1,000 years. They incredibly influence warfare and society like few other inventions. We're talking about guns. What began as the exclusive weapon of military forces across the globe has over time evolved into what some people, particularly in the United States, consider a basic right for the average citizen, enshrined in the Constitution itself. But when exactly were guns invented? The story begins in China around 850 CE, when alchemists, in search of a potion for eternal life, stumbled upon something far different: gunpowder. This black powder, known as huo yao, was a mix of charcoal, saltpeter, and sulfur. Under the reign of the Song dynasty, gunpowder was first used in warfare. The Chinese employed it against the Mongols, who relentlessly threatened their borders. In their defense, the Chinese deployed what could be considered the first firearms known as fire lances, or flying fire, which were essentially arrows with tubes of gunpowder that, when lit, would soar across enemy lines. As they refined their use of gunpowder, the Chinese developed an array of weapons to fight off the Mongols, including the earliest cannons and grenades. By the 13th century, gunpowder had made its way to Europe, likely along the Silk Road. European nations engaged in constant rivalry, beginning to refine gunpowder mixtures, ultimately landing on a formula close to what we know today, which was about 75% saltpeter, 15% charcoal, and 10% sulfur. By 1350, crude gunpowder cannons were common in both the English and French armies during the 100 Years' War. Over time, these cannons evolved into smaller, more portable designs. In the early 15th century, the hand cannon was born, marking the advent of personal firearms. The Ottoman Turks famously used these and other cannons to capture Constantinople in 1453, rendering Europe's traditional walled fortifications obsolete. Historians often point to the Chinese fire lance as the world's first gun. Yet, before the 15th century, these early firearms were difficult to use, requiring both hands and an external ignition source, like a burning wick, to fire. They then invented the matchlock to cut on the difficulty. The matchlock marked a significant leap forward. This internal firing mechanism made handheld firearms more efficient, easier to use, and much safer. The first widely known gun to utilize this technology was the 15th century French arquebus, a short-barreled rifle that could be fired from the shoulder and handled by a single person. These matchlock weapons, though more accurate, were still cumbersome, with about 2 minutes needed between each shot. Guns gradually replaced older weapons, not because they were deadlier, but because they were more cost-effective. Mastery of swords or bows required years of training, while a soldier could be taught to use a gun in a matter of weeks or months. Guns have profoundly impacted armed combat, altering everything from the distance at which armies engage to the types of injuries soldiers sustain. The evolution from Chinese fire lances to modern guns is really astounding. Let's take a look at how some of today's most famous firearms came about. Revolvers. Revolvers are a type of pistol that can fire multiple rounds without needing to reload after each shot. Though the basic concept dates back to the 17th century, it wasn't until 1835 that Samuel Colt produced his revolutionary version. Colt's use of interchangeable parts in manufacturing made his revolvers incredibly popular, especially during the US Civil War, 1861 to 1865, where they became the firearm of choice. Machine guns. During the US Civil War, soldiers got their hands on an early machine gun, the Gatling gun. Invented by Richard Jordan Gatling in 1862, it used a hand crank to achieve rapid-fire shooting. The creation of smokeless gunpowder in 1884 led to Hiram Maxim's development of the Maxim gun, the first fully automatic machine gun. Unlike the hand-cranked Gatling gun, the Maxim gun was recoil-operated and saw action in conflicts like the Spanish-American War, 1898, and the Boer War, 1899 to 1902. Maxim-style guns remained dominant through both world wars, eventually giving way to the rise of the assault rifle. Assault rifles can literally switch between automatic and semi-automatic firing modes. The first of its kind was the Sturmgewehr 44, known as the Assault Rifle 44, which was developed by German inventor Hugo Schmeisser during World War II. Later in the war, Russian inventor Mikhail Kalashnikov introduced the now legendary AK-47, where AK stands for Avtomat Kalashnikova. It's one of the most iconic firearms in history. It was designed during the late 1940s and officially adopted by the Soviet military in 1949. The goal was to create a reliable, easy-to-use assault rifle that could perform well in harsh conditions. The AK-47 combines features from earlier weapons, such as the German STG-44 and the American M1 Garand, but its simplicity and ruggedness set it apart. It uses a 7.62 by 39mm cartridge, offering a balance between stopping power and manageable recoil. Its gas-operated system allows it to fire in both semi-automatic and fully automatic modes. Mass production of the AK-47 began in the Soviet Union, but its design was shared widely with other communist countries during the Cold War. Over time, numerous variants were developed, and it became the standard issue weapon for many armies and insurgent groups worldwide. Today, the AK-47 is one of the most widely used and recognized rifles globally. Its durability, affordability, and reliability have made it a staple in conflicts across the world, earning it a controversial legacy as a weapon of both revolution and destruction.